Good evening, Centennial community, parents, staff, taxpayers. Thank you for joining us. Um, we are obviously here to give everyone an opportunity to see and meet and greet virtually with our superintendent to be, Dr. Dana Bedden. And we have pre-recorded this meet and greet based on questions that were submitted by the community. And it's one of the compromises we have to make as a result of COVID. Obviously, under normal circumstances, we would have an in-person forum, but given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, we can't do that. So we're doing this instead, and hopefully soon there'll be an opportunity for people to meet Dr. Bedden in person as hopefully the disease and our response to it disease goes away and our response to it gets better. First of all, I'd like to start off by thanking the school board for their patience through this process. We went through a comprehensive search that was led by the Bucks County IU. We had a meeting that some of you may have watched, may remember. We had a robust discussion about which of 3 or 4 different competing possible entities we wanted to run our search, and it was the will of the board to go with the Bucks County IU. And I think we owe them a tremendous debt of gratitude. They were very patient throughout this process, and they were very professional, and they did a great job getting us a great set of candidates from which to choose. And in fact, one of the folks who was hoping we would go in another direction on our board, Mr. Miller, specifically said at one point, I think in another public meeting, that the IU had done a wonderful job. So we thank the IU very much. Through their efforts, we went through a months-long process that brought us to where we are tonight. The community, the first step was to survey them on the traits and priorities we were looking for in our next superintendent, and that was done in May of 2020, and obviously now we're in August. And we got over 800 responses to that. Based on those responses, the board set a list of priorities, what we'd be looking for, and wrote a job description of some of the concepts that we wanted to see in our next superintendent. And so the job got posted on various national, state, and local sites and was posted for, I believe, 3 weeks. And we eventually received 25 applications, and that may not sound like very many when you're talking about a job that is as high profile as the superintendency of a school district, but keep in mind that we were doing it relatively late in the year. A lot of superintendent searches happen closer to January and February, but also there is a shortage in Pennsylvania of superintendent candidates because you must have a certificate. And so to get 25 applications with so many people who were very, very qualified and were very attractive candidates was a really fantastic job. We got them not just from Pennsylvania, but from New Jersey, Ohio, New York. So we had a lot of interest in the job. We did a comprehensive screening of the candidates we received. The board participated in that screening process, and eventually we came to 14 candidates that we wished to interview in a first round. And those interviews were conducted over a week's time. And they were short interviews, but they were enough to give us a sense of who each candidate was. And out of those 14 interviews, we eventually decided on 7 candidates that we wanted to have a more comprehensive conversation with more rigorous questions. And those 7 candidates, they were all qualified, highly qualified in most cases, and they all brought something unique to the table. And so when we sat down to then whittle the candidate pool down to its final number, we had some tough choices. I know for myself, it was really hard ranking the top 4, actually, because so many people had interviewed so well and so many people had different strengths to bring. But ultimately, the board decided that there were 2 candidates in particular who stood out head and shoulders above the rest, and we brought them in. And after that last interview process, and that was a much longer interview where the candidates were required to give us a presentation and talk about how they wanted to enter into our district. We also had representatives from the home and school associations from each of our 3 regions, our electoral regions. Region 1 is basically northwestern Warminster. Region 2 is southeastern Warminster, and Region 3 is Upper Southampton. We had a parent from each one of those a home and school association from each of those 3 areas. We had a representative of the Centennial Education Association. We had a representative of the Act 93 employees, and we invited the support staff as well. So they helped to shape the board's opinion of what we saw. And in the end, they strongly backed Dr. Bedden, all those folks. And the board came to this decision today that Dr. Bedden, that we are now here to celebrate today, that Dr. Bedden would be the best person for our school district going forward. We also did, of course, extensive vetting and background checking before offering contracts to anyone. And then we began the process of negotiating the contract. And that took time, as it does, but basically from, I believe, our first set of interviews was in mid-June, once we got our candidates selected, and we reached a final candidate with whom to negotiate on July the 9th, actually. And then we had an ability to come before the community, obviously, on Tuesday of last week, on July 28th, to announce that Dr. Bedden was our choice. So with all of that said, the board, obviously, and the IU worked very hard through all that process. We want to thank the community as well for participating in our surveys. I want to thank the CEA and the Act 93 people and the Home and School Associations for making sure that they had candidates, representatives there to participate in the process as well. This was, as much as we could make it, given the circumstances, a full community effort. And we are very pleased with our selection. We are very lucky to have, and I'm very lucky to introduce now to you, Dr. Dana Bedden.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon, for that wonderful introduction for Dr. Dana Bedden. My name is Mark Hoffman. I'm the Executive Director of the Bucks County Intermediate Unit, and it was my pleasure, and has been my pleasure, continues to be my honor and privilege to work with the Centennial School District Board of Directors, along with my colleagues, Joanne Parati and Rebecca Roberts-Malamus, from the Intermediate Unit team, to help facilitate what has been a comprehensive search for, as Mr. Dixon mentioned, Dr. Bedden. The Intermediate Unit, for those that may not know, is one of 29 educational service agencies supporting the schools and school districts of Pennsylvania. In Bucks County, of course, the Bucks County Intermediate Unit supports the 13 public school districts, 3 career and technical centers, and dozens of non-public schools, as well as providing early intervention, special education, professional development, and business office operations support services. One of the things that is always our pleasure to facilitate are superintendent searches. And so, as Mr. Dixon mentioned, the Intermediate Unit has been a proud partner and a privileged partner to work with the Centennial School District in its pursuit of what is inevitably the most important decision a board can make, and that is the selection of its superintendent, its chief academic officer, its chief executive officer. So Dr. Bedden, welcome to Bucks County, sir. It's been an honor to work with you throughout this process. And I really look forward to facilitating this conversation with you so that the community gets to know you in the same way that we at the IU and the board has gotten to know you over the last several weeks. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. Bedden, as you know, after you were selected as the superintendent, the board solicited questions from the community in an effort to get to know you a little better. And so over that time period, which was the Wednesday after you were approved by the board, which was July 29th, through this past Friday, which was July 31st at midnight, there was a forum available for community members to submit up to 2 questions for consideration in this conversation. So during that time period, 11 members of the community submitted about 21 questions. So we don't have time, of course, to go through 21 questions. And so the promise to the community was that we would evaluate all the questions that we received and synthesize and condense them down into themes so that every question is represented in a way that honors the question participant's intention, but also in a way that allows us to have a fluid, agile conversation. So without further ado, sir, I have 9 questions that I've synthesized from those 21. And are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to read the questions so I do them justice. So Dr. Bedden, again, welcome. And here we go with question number 1 for this forum. The Centennial School Board was able to get to know you rather well through the interview process, and they've shared your resume and your background with the community to help introduce you to everyone in various press releases and communication blasts to their stakeholder groups. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experiences, your strengths, and all that you are bringing to the Centennial School District as their newly appointed superintendent?
Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you to the Board of School Directors, the Board of Directors for allowing me the opportunity to serve the Centennial community. I want to tell the staff, the students, and the community that I'm looking forward to this opportunity to serve you. I've had 27 years in educational leadership, approaching 18 years as a superintendent. I have worked in districts as small as 5,500 and as large as 200,000. I've also had the opportunity to serve in districts that are predominantly African American, predominantly Caucasian, predominantly Hispanic. I've served as a middle school teacher, an athletic director, a high school principal, a regional superintendent, and I think a culmination of all those experiences, working both in the classroom as a building level administrator, as a central office director, regional superintendent, and then ultimately a superintendent, I think will put me in a position to try to pull upon that toolbox of experiences of working with a variety of people and also being exposed to a variety of different ways to look at and approach different situations. Ultimately, I think the more important thing is that I try to work to become the best transformational leader that I can, which is about inspiring a vision, creating a collaborative approach, that you have a team approach to addressing and solving problems. No one person makes the school district. No one person is the school district. I think that it is an honor to serve as a leader of the school district, but it really is about a team. And that's what I look forward to as an experience in Centennial, with the opportunity of leading a team that will meet the needs of our students and our staff and our community.
Thanks, Dr. Bedden. The next question is from a community member who asked why you chose to leave your current position as a superintendent in a neighboring county. And another asked what it was about the Centennial community that attracted you to apply for this position in the first place. So I think we can wrap those two questions together into one.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to answer that more so from the lens that I always try to take, which is the glass is half full rather than half empty, and really focus on the positives of my experience in Boyertown and the positives of what I see that drew me to Centennial School District. You know, when I was encouraged to consider the opportunity to be a part of the team serving the students, the staff, and the community, it was a tough decision. I mean, we were making some significant progress in addressing several big ticket items in Boyertown. I mean, we had the opportunity to put in place an effective resolution to getting a new teacher contract, a new bus service contract, coming to completion a significant stadium renovation project. We even had opportunity to complete Title IX equity audit and getting some adjustments made to our female athletic fields and opportunities to be more equitable. Progress in closing a significant multi-million-dollar budget shortfall that ended in a surplus, and then completing a district right-sizing and rezoning process. You know, when I started the journey of studying and learning more about Centennial, and then even going through the application process, I became interested in working as a part of a school district which appears to have a high interest and commitment in being a leader in equity of opportunity, a district that has an interest in being inclusive, looking at bilingual education, which I experienced as a superintendent in Texas, but a high commitment from the sessions that I participated in, listening to the parents, the students, even looking at the surveys and improving student outcomes. And more importantly, listening to a school board at the time with one of the sessions talking about developing a strong collaborative working relationship with the superintendent so that we can move the district forward. The board spoke about working together to create more positive student outcomes, and that being a high priority. So that became a significant interest to me and why I wanted to join and be a part of the Centennial family.
Thanks for that answer, Dr. Bedden. The third question that we have is actually a compilation of many, many questions. In fact, 7 of the 21 questions that I mentioned receiving directly relate to the district's COVID-19 plans? Obviously, we know that COVID-19's dominated local, state, and national, international headlines. So I think it's sort of logical that a third of the questions would be about that. However, I think until you officially take the helm as the superintendent in Centennial in September, we know that Dr. Seidenberger, the acting superintendent, and the team of leaders in Centennial are working diligently to plan now for the school district's safe return of students and teachers this fall. So knowing that there were several questions that dealt with the school district's virtual instruction plans, Canvas, Zoom, concerns from working parents, questions about the quality of virtual instruction, as well as questions about the district's cleaning protocol, I'm thinking we'll forward those specific granular questions to Dr. Seidenberger and to the task force team, knowing that you haven't really been a part of those planning processes yet. So I think it might be better suited to spend this time with you about high level. What are you thinking about COVID-19? What have you learned in your current role as a superintendent? And what do you anticipate working with Dr. Seidenberger and the team here on during the transition? And then ultimately when you assume the superintendency this fall?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that one of the articles that was released by the Philadelphia Inquirer and had a quote from in the headline that really captured the sentiment of many superintendents, no matter where you are in the Commonwealth, that oftentimes right now we're feeling like we're in a lose-lose situation. But we're in a position that I think any superintendent, educator, school board, teacher, we're trying to figure out how to make lemonade out of lemons. At the end of the day, our high focus has to be on providing a healthy, safe teaching and learning environment with the best possible case with the resources that we have available. Unfortunately, there is no unlimited well. We do need more resources to meet the needs and the challenges that we're facing. You know, my current position, we had a team approach. We had over 20 plus team members participate as part of our pandemic team, and even a designated pandemic coordinator, which was an option that you did not have to have. Then we approached it with also additional 60 plus staff and volunteers who were part of working groups. So trying to synthesize a plan that would balance the needs and desires of our community with those that we were receiving also from our students and staff. So we kind of had a grouping of the staff input, the parents and the students, and tried to find that happy medium as best we possible could, realizing that in no particular case that we're going to satisfy everyone. The overarching theme of the health and safety plan was for each school community to help to provide a local plan that was about non-instructional and instructional reopening activities. It was about tailoring it to the unique needs of the school community. While I've not been a part of the process in Centennial, I've had, since being appointed, several conversations with Dr. Seidenberger. So he shared information with me regarding the proposed plans that are coming forward with the school board. I believe Dr. Seidenberger is a recognized and talented leader, and I'm sure he, along with the team and CSD, are working to provide the best possible options for the school district. I believe that they have taken time to look at the feedback and information they received, and will try to make the best possible plan that they believe would suit the needs and best serve the needs of the school district in providing a educational program in a safe and healthy and well-being environment.
Thanks, Dr. Bedden. Related to COVID-19, one community member asked to get to know a little bit more about board authorizations for the superintendent to make decisions for things like contract approvals, expenditures during extenuating circumstances like a pandemic, et cetera. Knowing that the variables during a pandemic crisis change daily, sometimes I feel like it's by the hour, quite frankly, and that the board might only meet twice a month, for example. What might something like that look like in Centennial?
Well, one is I looked at Centennial's board policies, and they actually have some policies that are written already to deal with emergency circumstances. They also have some flexibility that is already seems to be designed with regards to purchasing and acquisition. But more importantly, I think that each district has to look at how it functions and operates and come up with the best solution that possible to make sure that they can move flexibly and rapidly to respond to the changing landscape. We typically get guidance, feedback, new data on a daily basis with COVID-19. One of the things that our solicitor worked with us to draft was a resolution that gave additional authority to the superintendent. The only expectation we had as a team, because that was not just unique while I was given authority to the superintendent, it was about our team, was to make sure that we could respond quickly and favorably to ensure that we had continuity of education services in a safe and well-being manner for our students and staff. Our solicitor has 40 plus years of experience in school law, and particularly serving our district. And I assure you that any authority given by the school board would have checks and balances in place, but be focused on meeting the needs of our students. And those are temporary measures, not intended to be something that is permanent, but more so driven by how do we make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure staff, students, and community is kept safe. I'd also like to say to the listening audience that as a commissioned officer of the Commonwealth and a licensed educator, there are a lot of restrictions and guidance that I would have to adhere to as an individual to maintain a commitment to the oath of office, as well as the requirements of other license that we're given as educators in the Commonwealth. That is something that each district has looked at individually. Some have done resolutions granting more power to the superintendent. Some have done revisions to their policies to address the situation. My main focus would be to work with the school board to make sure that we are in a position to make sure that we can respond efficiently, effectively, and appropriately within the realm of the law, because I have no interest and desire to be anywhere near anything that is not appropriate in meeting the needs of our students, staff, and our community. So that's something that I would think that either is in place, being worked on now, or I would work with the school board to work within our comfort zone to establish those parameters, but with the goal of making sure that we are doing what we can do to the best of our ability to meet the needs of our students and staff and our community in a safe manner.
Thanks for that answer, Dr. Bedden. Centennial, as I'm sure you've learned very quickly in your research of the district, and since you've been named the next superintendent, I'm sure you've discovered that they have a very strong tradition in Centennial, a proud tradition supporting academics, athletics, and the arts. The 3 A's in Centennial, known far and wide. A parent wants to know more about how, as superintendent, you'll continue to ensure the appropriate support of all 3, that is athletics, arts, and academics, and in any order you choose, especially for things like clubs and activities that don't generate significant fundraising or ticket sales. This particular parent mentioned the chess club, for example. So just what do you think about balancing those 3 things? And then maybe let's talk to the parent's question about those activities that don't generate a ton of revenue.
Well, I think the word you use is balance is really the key to it. I believe in a holistic approach. I think that is one of the things that I looked at when I was looking at Centennial, that they openly talk about academics, athletics, and the arts. And I believe that we have to have a well-rounded, holistic educational program. Now, the reality is that there's always an elephant in the room, that it's about resources. So you still have to work within your resources. So it's sometimes challenging to meet the needs and the interests of all students. But to produce a student that is college, career, and life ready, we need to expose them and create opportunities for them to have an opportunity to be exposed to all 3 of those things. I've been blessed from a personal experience to be exposed to all of those as a student myself, but also as a parent. I've had my 3 children, that my oldest son, who went on to go to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, was an athlete, but also played in the band, an accomplished saxophonist. My youngest daughter, who's a rising 10th grader, has run track, and she sings in a choir. And we're pushing very hard for her to have what we call a second language acquisition. So she's pushing hard to develop her skills in Spanish, to be conversationally fluent in a world second language, which I consider world language. So I believe that all of those are part of what I call the social, emotional, and academic development of our students. And within our capacity and our resources, they are an integral part of the educational program. Specific to chess, ironically, I believe chess is one of the hallmark foundations of opportunities for students to develop a critical thinking and problem solving skills. I had the very fortunate experience to be a part of Philadelphia School District at the time as a regional superintendent, and a pleasure to work with an outstanding middle school principal at Box, Dr. Salome Thomas L., who's nationally known now for his work in winning 8 national championships in chess. And then a time in William Penn, we introduced chess as part of our normal experience and curriculum. When you don't have the ability to intertwine it, I'm absolutely a big supporter of that being a club or activity because it directly contributes to our students' academic development. Again, I say that with what I believe, but also know that we also have to be responsible. So we really do sometimes have challenges with resources. But I think a well-rounded program of academics, athletics, and arts, and I would go on to make sure that in that academic program, we talk about second language acquisition and developing fluency in another language is a big part of it also.
Well, pardon the pun, I can't resist. You're speaking my language. I'm a former Spanish teacher. So when you talk about your daughter and when you talk about language acquisition, I love it. So that really resonates with me. So agreed.
But it's college career readiness also. When you think about it, you know, having a second language also makes our students much more marketable in the workforce also. So it is about career readiness also having a second language. And of course, the second most popular language in the U.S. is Spanish. We know the most popular second language for Americans for the world would be Mandarin. And, you know, those are 2 of the high profile languages that I think anytime you have the capability to support, we should try to include.
Well said. Well said. So we're actually right on track here. This is question number 6, and it's related to curriculum and essentially what we just started talking about, quite frankly. So Dr. Bedden, 2 community members asked about curriculum. Specifically, one asked about things like, specifically, I'm going to list some of the things this person mentioned: Holocaust education, slavery, religion, and culture. Another community member asked how, as superintendent, you'll ensure that the curriculum in the district remains relevant to a student population that is diverse and that continues to increase in diversity.
Well, just to be honest, and I think this is, everyone knows this is being new to Centennial School District, of course. I've not been afforded an opportunity yet to really dig deep and delve into the curriculum. So I'll speak from a general term of what I think is good educational practice, and that would be to say that we should ensure that we're offering a curriculum that is aligned with standards. As you know, standards are, you know, learning goals for what we understand a student should know and be able to do at a particular grade level. I think we need to have consistency so that no matter where a student is within our system, that once we've identified and aligned with the state standards or any additional standards that we choose as a local community to make a part of that grade level, we want to ensure that there's equity across the board, that we set a baseline standard of what a student should know and be able to do. So no matter where they go to school in our district, no matter where a teacher works in our district, they can have the ability and the resources to meet the needs of those students. Specific to the question, you know, regards to the subject of teaching with religion and Holocaust and those things, you know, that we know there's more available to teach our students and we often have time to teach our students. So I would hope that our focus is on providing a teaching and learning environment that is relevant, engaging, and produces students, again, that is college, career, and life ready. And not just test takers. I think we need to work very hard to make sure that we have a local, meaning the Centennial School District, flavor within our curriculum. I think we need to make sure we have a regional and a state and then a national, so that no matter where our students are leaving us to go to, that they really are able to be college, career, and life ready also. It is not my job as a superintendent to determine who goes to college or who chooses what career, but to make sure that we give them the foundation and a household that they can choose to go either way, whether they want to go into college, maybe they want to go later, but they also are able to be productive citizens in society. So that would mean making sure that they have a choice, that we have a strong foundation, that it really is driven by the family, then the community to decide what's best in a student for them at that time when they are leaving us for post-graduate opportunities. Something's happened. I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, there was an issue with my microphone. So thank you for making sure I didn't get too far down the road. You actually mentioned quickly, briefly foreshadowing the next question, which is about standardized tests and grade point averages. So a community member submitted a question asking if you believe that standardized test scores and grade point averages are a fair and reasonable way to measure and compare student academic performance. Could you give some of your philosophy related to those types of metrics?
First, I would say to you that standardized test scores should be a part of a larger, broader, complete puzzle or a scorecard that is used to communicate the success of our students, our staff, and our school district. It really should not be the only measure of comparison, but it should be a part of it. And the reality is sometimes that is the simplest way that our community looks to assess the performance of a school district. So it's important that we talk about growth, that we can show that we're continuing to get better, that we're not stagnant. I think other parts that are important is about the social emotional learning development of our students. We can talk about the second language acquisition. We can talk about the athletic participation, the club participation. We also, when we think about grade point averages, many universities are moving away from just looking at, for example, as a admission process, grade point averages. They have come to realize, as we already knew, that grade point averages can be influenced also by the rigor or lack of rigor within the academic program. So I think we have to be careful and just using that as a tool. I think that I often want to make sure that our students are seeking those rigorous, challenging courses, not necessarily the easiest courses to get a higher GPA. One encourage, so example, I've had a student that came to me and talked with their parents and talked about whether or not they should stay in an AP class where they had a fear of getting a B versus another class where they felt like they could get an A. And I talked to them about developing an understanding of the rich experiences that they may have had in that AP class versus taking a regular class that would not challenge the student or meet the student's need. So we want to be careful that if we put too much emphasis on GPAs that maybe push our students away. Our ability to write, effectively communicate, articulate orally to our community at large, our students when they're going to college admissions is becoming more and more important. Varied experiences that include what Centennial is already talking about with academics, athletics, and the arts is becoming more and more important to universities and not just a student who has a high GPA. So I think that we have to be careful that if we make the measure of success just about GPAs and test scores, there are students who are not great test takers. But we also have to have differentiated ways of assessing students' knowledge of what they know and are able to do. So I think we have to have a balanced approach and a holistic approach to how we do, maybe a balanced scorecard that we work with the community to say, here's what we believe we want, for lack of a better term, what we may call a profile of a graduate. That's one of the things that before COVID-19 in one of my other district that we were talking about developing a profile of a graduate, which was going to be more holistic in how we report what our graduates look like when they're leaving our school district.
Dr. Bedden, we're actually on question 8 of 9, so 2 to go. This is still related to the world of academics. This community member would like to know your thoughts on special education. Specifically, can you talk about your experience with special education and how that experience that you're bringing to Centennial will benefit the district's students with special needs?
Well, first I'll personalize it and share that my middle daughter was a special needs student, so that I know what it's like to be on both sides of the table as the administrator or the building level administrator, being a part of the IEP team, but also as that parent. I also would like to share that our special needs or special education program also is about the gifted. And I've had that experience, being my oldest son being designated as gifted. So I've been in both chairs of the administrator who's dealing with the gifted student or the student who has learning differences that we need to modify and tweak the program to make sure they're successful. But I've also been the parent sitting on that side of the table. I hope that our efforts, and again, I haven't been a part of the Centennial School District process and procedures yet, but I will believe, and hope to believe, and start with the premise that we are developing individual education plans that are designed to make sure our students are able to be successful in meeting their academic program that's been developed. At the end of the day, it's about making sure that we make appropriate accommodations for them to be successful. It just means that they may learn differently or see things differently, not that they can't do things. And we need to establish the appropriate parameters to measure success and progress. With regards to the online learning, I think that's the decision that the IEP team should make. My current district, I only speak to that our approach is that the IT team meets and look at each individual student individually and determine whether they can be successful on an online program or whether we need to do a combination where they're working online and still have in-person support, or whether we still need to develop a plan so they can get total direct support from the teacher in a traditional format versus online. So that's something that I think we have to think about case by case and really depend on the IEP team to be a part of that decision-making process so that we have a balanced approach in trying to meet the needs and listen to the parent and the challenges that the parents may have at home in supporting the student with online, should that be a case that may exist with the virtual option that the school district is looking at.
Thanks, Dr. Bedden. This is the 9th question out of 9, so this is it, sir. A parent would like to know more about your philosophy specific to bullying. What experiences do you have addressing student bullying, school culture, and the like, sir?
Well, culture and climate directly impacts, I think, the quality of teaching and learning that occurs in a school. I also would say that I've grown to learn that environment influences attitude. So we want to create a positive environment for students to be successful. First and foremost, I think it's the district's responsibility to make sure that we understand and have a defined definition of what bullying is. One of the challenges that we face, no matter what district I work in, is making sure that people don't say it's bullying when it's not. And we do have an understanding of what the definition is and what the criteria is for us to declare that bullying has occurred. It's a part of having an anti-bullying process and procedures is a part of having an inclusive and respectful and a learning environment, one that is accepting of differences. We also must have a defined process to assess concerns about bullying. One of the things that in the districts I've worked in the past is that we try to work very hard to not disenfranchise anyone who has a concern about bullying. So oftentimes when we go through an established process, our goal is to make sure that we're honoring FAPE, a free and appropriate education for all students. All students have rights. So with that process, we're really working to determine whether there's evidence to support the concern. And if there's no evidence, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But the premise is that do we have evidence to support so that we take the appropriate corrective action to support the student who may have been bullying? And if there is no evidence, then we talk about what are the corrective actions we need to take to make sure that both students are being able to thrive and be successful in an environment that is inclusive. One of the things about FAPE is that when you do something to take something away from a student, you have to have justification to do that in modifying their access to a free and appropriate education. And that works both ways. If there's a defined case of bullying, then we also want to make sure that that student is supported not only by the appropriate action to mitigate that bullying, but also the social, emotional, and mental health that they may have gone through that process. So it is a holistic approach that needs to happen. The same thing happens when we deal with a student who may have been a part of it. It's educating them, not just a response that is about punishing, but trying to educate them and understand what it is they need to do differently to be more inclusive and accepting, but also their social emotional development in the process that they may not be aware of. I say it this way because it's a challenging situation. It's a real situation in schools. Parents often don't understand when school districts don't take the type of action that they believe they should. One of the things that we try to do to educate parents is that we have parameters that we have to operate within also, and responding to concerns about bullying and making sure that we are honoring FAPE in that process. I think your mic is off again.
Thanks for that comprehensive answer. That officially takes us to the conclusion of our second and middle piece of this forum. Dr. Bedden, congratulations on reaching this position. The intermediate unit and all of Bucks County stands ready as a willing partner to support you and the school district during your tenure as superintendent. This is now the time where you have an opportunity to take the floor, sir, and offer any closing remarks. Following your closing remarks, Mr. Dixon will return and he'll wrap up tonight's evening. Again, Dr. Bedden, congratulations. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, again, I'd start with first thanking everyone for this opportunity to be a part of the Centennial team. The second thing I'd like to highlight is that to the community that's listening, schools can't do it alone. We're in unprecedented times. That is a challenge for all of us. And we really, really have to band together to provide the best possible solution to meet the needs of our student, staff, and community during this pandemic. Thirdly, I absolutely have a learning curve. I ask that they are patient with me. I ask that there's a noisy environment, meaning I encourage everyone to share openly and freely their thoughts. I'm definitely a process and procedure person, but I want to absorb as much information as I can as I transition in to understand the Centennial culture, climate, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It is my hope that to have an effective team of 10 that the community will have confidence in. It is my hope that we have a noisy environment, even in the boardroom, that is both one that is challenging us to think holistically about meeting the needs of our students, an environment that, whether it be within an administrative meeting or wherever, that we can have a robust conversation, and where we may disagree, we stay away from being disagreeable towards each other. I think in this unprecedented time, our students are watching how we respond. They need our support, they need stability, they need calmness. This has been something that many of them will look back on and wonder how they got through it. And I think more importantly, the social emotional aspect is going to be hugely important as our students return back to school in the fall in some form or fashion. Classrooms, if they're in person, will be very different than what they're used to. So that's going to be a big surprise to many students. Obviously, if they're virtual, it's still got a little taste in the spring, but it's going to be very different than what they're used to. So we just have to find the best solutions possible. But more importantly, it's kind of like making a decision about a snow day as a superintendent. You know, you can always make up a day, but we can't make up a life. And I think we have to err on the side of safety first and making sure that every student and staff member is still with us post-COVID. And that has to be a high priority, and that will be a significant focus as I transition in and work with the interim superintendent, who I think already has that mindset, that he's trying to find a way to make sure that we have a solid academic program, but most importantly, value the students, the staff, and the community, and that all of them are healthy and safe at the end of this significant challenge. But again, thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to serving the community, the district, serving the board, and anyone else who is in need, because at the end of the day, the Commonwealth is in a really, really significant place, and we have to band together, not only as local jurisdictions, but at state level to be successful in meeting this challenge. You know, as a former military enlisted and officer, this is, we would say, an enemy that we can't see, so it's hard to plan for. And so we're going to keep planning while we're on the move, kind of building a plane as we're flying it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bedden, and thank you to the Centennial community for tuning in this evening. Thank you again, Dr. Hoffman, for your facilitation for this event. Again, obviously, we apologize that we can't do it in person. That's obviously our preference. It's our preference to do everything in person. That's what we're used to, and we want to get back to that as soon as possible. But I echo Dr. Bedden's sentiments that obviously the safety of everybody, certainly our students, their families, our staff, their families, has to come first. So we hope everyone had an opportunity to look at this who wanted it, and we hope everybody enjoyed the opportunity to get to see Dr. Bedden live as he can be, and in person as he can be under the circumstances. And we certainly look forward to welcoming him to our district on a full-time basis. And I know the whole board is committed to working together as a team to get us through this next phase, however long it lasts, and then redoubling our efforts and our goal and our concentration and interest in the educational goals of the district beyond. So thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you.